So, between the accident, I was left in what other people would call the loony bin. And for exactly 86 days between 2003 and 2004, I spent my days in another room with another person who would become my roommate. His name was Derek. Derek and I would eventually, down the road, become friends. One thing that Derek and I agreed on, nearly ubiquitously, was cartoons. Mainly SpongeBob SquarePants, that him and I would constantly fanboy over. Derek and I would usually hog the television in the activity room when it was TV time. And we would always want it to be on Nickelodeon. I remember it so clearly. And it still haunts me to this day of what I saw on that television. But more importantly, what Derek didn't see. It was a Saturday, January 3rd, 2004. It was about 8:30, maybe 9 a.m. I was lying in bed waiting for Joanna to come with the usual Saturday breakfast, with the side of my usual medication. You see, between October 23rd, 2003 and January 17th, 2004, I put myself into a place where I could be safe from harming myself, and also just generally to take a break from society. Let's just say I'm not exactly the kind of guy every girl would just talk to. I definitely lack social skills involving conversation with people in general. I wasn't making any friends whatsoever, at least on the outside world. But between that and everything else that I want to share with you, I want you to know that I'm not crazy, okay? And I'm not going to stop until someone believes me. Anyway. SpongeBob SquarePants, Season 1, Episode 17. The episode in question includes 2 segments, of course. Arg being the first, and Rock Bottom the second. Everything was fine with Arg. Played exactly like it should have. But once it got to Rock Bottom, that's when things started to get a little bit fucked up. A little bit too fucked up, in my opinion. And if you're not familiar with the episode Rock Bottom, it's an episode where Patrick and SpongeBob go to Glove World. They take a bus back home to Bikini Bottom, however, they miss their stop, and end up in, you guessed it, Rock Bottom. While SpongeBob tells Patrick to wait for the bus, it plays out fine. Until Patrick screams to SpongeBob the line, "Hey SpongeBob, the bus is here." Now when Patrick says this, it usually goes this way. SpongeBob chases after the bus as Patrick screams out for SpongeBob, and then the bus goes upward, vertically, back to Bikini Bottom, leaving SpongeBob stuck. However, that's not what happened this time. See, when Patrick starts to scream that the bus is here, he repeats this line about 3 times. And once SpongeBob is left behind, the screen goes into a reddish color. Still showing SpongeBob. It then cuts out for a second or two. Then it cuts back to SpongeBob going to the station to get onto the next bus. The part where SpongeBob has to wait in line plays like it should, until the ticket guy tells SpongeBob that it's the last bus until morning. It skips over SpongeBob yelling, "Oh no you don't," interspersed between the sound effect, and him commanding the ticket guy to get him a bus to Bikini Bottom that instant. The episode instead skips to the ticket guy turning out the light, saying goodnight. This is when the TV starts to lag out and glitch into a haze of static. At this point, I thought maybe something was wrong with the channel. It's not impossible for something like this to occur, especially here. I was looking at Derek, whose eyes were now glued to the TV, still not even fazed by whatever I was seeing or what was happening. After the static ended, for what seemed like a good 15 seconds, it goes back to that blood-red screen. And in that red screen is SpongeBob, still waiting for the bus at the bus stop. I don't know if it was me or not, but in the background I started to hear faint voices, talking, growing louder as time progressed. I didn't recognize any of the voices, but there were two that I heard. When I heard them, they scared the shit out of me. Both were male voices, both very, very deep. And as the blood-red screen stayed and SpongeBob stood there motionless, it almost seemed as if the voices were having a back and forth. You'll never leave here. You'll always be here. There's no going back. Come closer. Stay with us. This hell is your home now. The TV screen began to morph into a depiction of what I could only consider hell itself. The two voices laughing as the whole picture was starting to turn twisted and going out of control, almost spiraling into something horrifying. It looked like fire. Pure red fire. And that's when I saw the two faces appear. They were pale white faces mixed with the red background. Mouths opened wide with giant grins, and they stopped talking and started laughing. Their morbid-looking faces with these demented eyes staring back at me and laughing so loud that I covered my ears. Their laughter to me was like having someone drilling into your eardrums, and I was worried about going deaf at this point. I would look back once more at the faces and I would scream as loud as I could and try to overpower their laughter. It wasn't working well in my favor. Just then, Derek turned to me and asked me from the opposite side if I was okay. He would tell me to calm down and would try to figure out what was going on. I could barely hear him, though. He didn't realize this, obviously. But I didn't calm down. I couldn't. It just wasn't possible. I was so disturbed and felt like my head was about to explode from the sound of those two faces on the TV screen. Derek grabbed me, and as he did, the faces would stop laughing and repeat the same phrases over and over again. I screamed once again and begged them to go away and leave me alone. Derek was looking around, trying to scope out who or what I was talking to. I then began to get lightheaded, and from what I was told, my eyes rolled back into my head, as if I was seizing, but fully aware of everything going on. Derek shouted for someone to come help as loud as he could. And that's when things went black. I had a pure second of peace and quiet, and it felt like such a relief. Next thing I knew, I'm strapped down in my bed, unaware of where I was, confused, trying to come to. Derek was beside me. He asked if I was alright. I responded, asked him what happened, and asked if he saw what I saw on the TV. Confused, he looked at me, asked me what I was talking about. He confirmed that we were just watching SpongeBob like we always do in the morning. He then went on saying that I started to scream, freak out. He said my eyes were rolling back and I wouldn't stop squirming and screaming for whatever or whoever to leave me alone and go away. I asked him if he saw those faces or heard those voices, and Derek looked at me like I was nuts. He shook his head no. Derek didn't even see the red screen. He would just go on about how it was just the plain episode of Rock Bottom. It was playing perfectly fine. I was very shocked to say the least, but mostly I was scared. After a while, I went to go talk to the doctor in the facility where I was staying. I didn't tell him what I saw or what I heard on the television that morning. I just told him that the meds I was taking made me feel out of it, and since he upped them, it must have made me have that episode. I lied, basically. I told him that the pills made me spaz out and that he may need to lower my dosage back to whatever it was originally. He agreed with no exceptions. Eventually, I was out of his office. And 14 days later, I was released. I would go back home and try to get out more into society. I would try to meet new people. Hell, find a girlfriend down the road. Derek and I, we still keep in touch. Not frequently, but he still says to this day that nothing I saw that day is what he saw. I digress. All of you out there, thank you for listening to me, even if you think I'm a bit crazy. Maybe someday I could find someone or anyone who saw what I witnessed that morning. I doubt it, though. But until then, I'll be waiting, I guess. I'll keep going and living and trying to make my life better. At least I'm not stuck in rock bottom. And I hope I never have to see those faces ever again.